Chinese consulates task Chinese students in aggressive intelligence ops, according to Canadian intelligence. Beijing's top diplomats in Canada are tasking and likely funding Chinese student associations in aggressive intelligence operations that include monitoring and coercing other students and university officials, Canadian intelligence documents allege. According to CSIS investigations, these operations include a consul general tasking Chinese students to investigate and gather intelligence on the family of an alleged Chinese economic figure. It goes on, but I think involving students in this is just sick. Like
It's
it's
sinister.
another level. It's kind of like, you know what? Well, you'll see someone, they're a Chinese student. You're like, oh, wonderful, they're coming to learn about freedom and culture. No, it
Yeah,
turns out the government has them operating as a Chinese like spy. This is
right.
brutal, and it sounds just about on brand for the Chinese government. Yeah, what do you make of this?
Well, I think probably I'm not surprised by any of this. I just assume that every organization that has direct ties to the Chinese government is spying on
Yeah,
Canadians or expats. Like, it just at this point, I'm just like, yep. If there's like any sort of link to Chinese officialdom, I'm just going to assume
yeah,
they're spying. But what I think is the most important line in all of this is that the feds, in particular, Justin Trudeau, have known about this allegation since 2019, so a good 4 years. It says the allegations are disclosed in a June 2019 Canadian Eyes Only draft report for Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, produced by NSICOP, a bipartisan intelligence review body. And so this intelligence document was reviewed exclusively by Sam Cooper's operation, the Bureau, and it describes how Chinese diplomats in Canada have deeply infiltrated campuses, cleverly leveraging the protected spaces of higher education to attack the nation's democratic and economic institutions. So the feds have known about this for 4 years, and what have the feds done? Nothing. Why?
yeah,
Because the feds are benefiting from this. Like they
yeah.
are winning in ridings, and conservative Chinese candidates are losing because they are not the preferred choices of Beijing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild, and it's just part of a pattern that, like, when is there going to be some sort of justice? This liberal government, this Justin Trudeau government, we're going to talk, you talked about it yesterday, but we're going to talk about Minister Guilbeault's direct involvement with this
Yep.
Chinese government. But you can go on and on. I can't even remember the instances. You have money coming in from a large Chinese community in China to Justin Trudeau's Eastern Canadian constituency. You have election interference. You have police stations being set up. It goes on and on. There are just no lack, and there's no effort, no willingness, no desire. In fact, there's a very self-evident sort of uh, condoning of what is going on by this government across the board. And we talked about this off the top of the show. It doesn't matter if you're opening coal factories every year, coal production sites, electric sites in China. You can be opening one every day, and this liberal government will encourage you while they're shutting down natural resources that are far more
Yeah.
ethical right here in Alberta. There's a glaring double standard, and what's the possible motivation for it? I mean, one can speculate, but it isn't rational. It isn't in line with Canadian interests. It isn't in line with the needs of people who are struggling to pay their bills. There has to be sort of a personal benefiting agenda for certain people, Justin Trudeau nominally, but what
Cui
is it?
bono, as
What?
they say. Cui
Yeah,
bono. Who benefits? Who
yeah,
benefits from this? So China benefits, but so does Justin Trudeau.
yeah,
Benefits from the support of his favorite dictatorship, because I think the Liberals' only ideology is power at all costs
yeah.
and hanging on to power at all costs. And they're willing to take that help from anybody, even if it means trading the integrity of Canadian institutions and Canadian democracy for it.
Yeah. And I don't know if we're ever going to get to the bottom of, if we're ever going to get an honest answer as to what conversations or dealings. This is such a pattern here that this isn't simply looking the other way. This has to be a two-way street. There has to be networks of communication for this to be happening on this scale. If something happens once, it can be a coincidence. Twice, the same thing. Three times, you start to be suspicious. But if you're talking about dozens, hundreds of instances of the same patterns of behavior, there's something undeniable going on here. And hey, it'd be great if the RCMP would investigate that, but I guess they won't. Maybe we can send the sheriffs and the Saskatchewan force out there to investigate. But
Then
yeah,
the
this
BC
is
ferry cops.
yes, and the BC ferry authorities. So we did talk about this yesterday, but I do want to
Yeah.
touch on Scott Moe weighing in on this. So Daniel Smith tweeted that after a recent news report, Mr. Stephen Guilbeault is a vice chair of a CCP environmental group. I'm concerned as why the minister wants Alberta to be net zero by 2035, but is okay with China getting there by 2060. Now, Daniel Smith said that this was recent, but I think we broke this, what, 5 years ago, you're saying, Sheila?
Yes. So Brian Lilly, the Post Media bailout journalist, has discovered an exclusive story that Rebel News broke in 2018. So good job, Brian. You're a little late to the game. But yeah, so 2018, we broke the news that Catherine McKenna, the environment minister at the time, was sitting on this advisory board of the CCP. And not only does the Canadian Environment Minister sit on this advisory board, but Canada also pays $1.6 million to China, the world's second largest economy, for the pleasure of advising the Chinese communist genocide heirs on their climate policy. It's just the stupidest thing ever. So now, 5 years later, the mainstream media catches up to us and they report this and the new minister involved is Stephen Guilbeault. And so now the conservative politicians are outraged by this news that was broken 5 years ago. You know what? Late, whatever, but I'm happy at least now they're expressing outrage on this issue. Because I think it is now in like the proper context, just how infiltrated and how intermingled we are with the CCP.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It isn't like it isn't even a maybe anymore. We talked about the pattern being established. It isn't even a pattern being established. It's like, yeah, this guy works for them.
Works
How
for
there's
them.
not, yeah,
Yeah.
it works for them. How there is not just an overt like they're on the board of the World Economic Forum. They're working for the Chinese Communist Party. That's not how it's not acceptable under any metric. And the fact there isn't a clear conflict of interest and that the House isn't immediately saying, well, you have to resign, this is ridiculous. All of this stuff under a conservative government prior to Justin Trudeau, maybe not the WEF board thing, there's been some of that before, but all this stuff, the people would be, every headline would be deriding them. They'd be done in politics forever. But now it's just business as usual. And we've now got a couple generations of liberals working for this Communist Party that is engaged in an act of genocide presently. Is if you care about the environment, the greatest polluter the world has ever seen, and no one will ever catch them. And one of the greatest human rights violators. But I mean, this is the thing: is if you look at the policies that this government is enforcing, if you look at the way Justin Trudeau talks about certain groups of people, if you look how Justin Trudeau acts, he wants us to be like China, not an economic powerhouse, but completely subservient, beaten down with absolutely nothing. He said outright he admires the basic dictatorship and their capacity to get things done. This is what he wants. He wants to be the leader of Canada, the supreme unchallenged leader of communist Canada. It's surreal.
And again, let's loop back to Melanie Joly saying, we've got a plan if the US, I guess, votes Republican. But we've got because voting Republican might turn the place authoritarian, I guess, in spite of the Constitution, which actually restrains the government and actually has teeth, unlike the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. That's what they're worried about, while we have a minister of the Crown working for the CCP.
Yeah, we've got a plan. It was provided. We're still working. The reason she couldn't provide details is because it's still being translated from Chinese. That's where they got their plan, and that's why she doesn't have details yet, because it was given to them because a strong Republican government in the United States means a strong United States, and China
Ooh.
does not like
China
that.
doesn't like
So
that.
yeah,
Yes, that's a great point.
good to
Yeah.
see here though. And speaking of good point, that's how Scott Moe starts his tweet. Perfect segue. Good point. Scott Moe now. Why is a Canadian minister serving on an advisory council created by the Communist Party government of China? Welcome, Premier of Saskatchewan and leader of the Saskatchewan Party, Scott Moe, to the conversation Rebel News has been having for 5 years. But again, it is good to see Alberta and Saskatchewan once again saying, no, no, we're not gonna go along with this. We're saying no. While the Liberal government may go along with this, we've got politicians with brass now who are saying, no, absolutely not. And come mess around with the West and you're going to get the horns.
Hey folks, that was a clip from the daily live stream. I co-host it Monday to Thursday from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The Alberta team takes over on Friday. Please tune in. And by the way, we want to hear your 2 cents worth. If you're able to make a minimal $5 donation, we will read your chat on the air live. Thank you.